Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our free webinar session today presented by Continia. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about automate and optimize your AP and expense management. We estimate that today's webinar will take up about 45 minutes of your time, including some time at the end for a Q&A. Our webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session. All attendees will receive a follow-up email after the webinar is complete with a link to access the presentation. In the chat, you can also find links to our social media, our website, as well as a link to our Calendly, where you can schedule a 30-minute meeting with one of our experts at Sabre to discuss any questions you might have. With that being said, I'd like everyone to submit questions through the question panel or chat during the session, or wait until the end for the Q&A. Please remember to stay muted during the session unless otherwise prompted. Now I'd like to introduce you all to Brett Feldman, Partner Account Manager at Continia North America.
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you for the Sabre team for inviting Continia to represent and present document capture for accounts payable and expense management for employee expenses. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I look forward to sharing more. So what we'll do to start off the demo is we're going to walk through a quick overview of Continia, really what we do across North America and, of course, across the globe, and then we'll dive into the presentation. So with Continia, we work directly through partners like Sabre, and we do that for many reasons, but typically because Sabre is and are the BC experts, and Continia is entirely embedded into Business Central. We are specifically built for Business Central and do not work with any other ERPs. Now, because of that, we better be very good at what we do. But our whole theme of Continia is about time savings. We believe it's the most valuable asset in business and life, and we strive to give you back as much time as you can to focus on the high-value activities. Now, to achieve these time savings, we have multiple solutions across North America, and we are growing substantially. Document capture is what we're going to cover today to automate inbound documents, such as invoices, but other records, and of course, assigning to existing records. There's a large component of Copilot AI throughout document capture, which we'll touch on momentarily. Expense management is for employee expenses, personal and corporate card expenses. And a really neat aspect of expense management is we bring the corporate card transaction feed from the bank or the card issuer directly into Business Central in near real time. Now, what that does is it creates the expense card for the expense user and prompts them to attach a receipt. But very, very simple to use solution with a mobile app for expensing and, of course, a web approval portal, which is mobile optimized for approvers. Now, document output is a lot of times a phase 2 project, but if document capture is for inbound documents, document output is for outbound documents, where we will hyper-personalize outbound communications and streamline those outbound activities, whether you want to send out an invoice, send out sales orders, sales invoices, statements, reminders, you name it. We can automatically send out those documents. In the near future, we'll be releasing Continia Banking, and we also have sustainability for any carbon accounting or ESG reporting. Now, this is a very important aspect of Continia, is we're the only process automation solutions built specifically for Business Central. The reason I highlight that is we do what a lot of companies do for accounts payable automation expense. The biggest difference for us is we are entirely specific to Business Central. We've been doing it for quite some time. We have over 12,000 customers for document capture globally. Expense is not too far behind that. And in the cloud, you pay for what you use. So we look at the end of the month, we'll look back at your previous month and determine how many documents did you use per month. And we charge accordingly. And everything is billed through Spark or through Sabre. So Sabre will be the ones to invoice you. They'll also be your first line of support. And of course, Continia, we support Sabre, so you're always in good hands. Now, we're built inside Business Central, so what does that mean? It means we don't have any integrations and very, very little maintenance. It's all in Business Central, and all your BC data is available. So if you leverage any kind of reporting with Business Central, like Power BI or other reporting aspects, Continia's data is Business Central data, so that you can adopt that with any kind of reporting aspects. Now for document capture specifically, we're going to walk through invoices today, how to automate those, but you can also create credit memos, purchase orders, sales orders, and receipts. And you can assign to existing records as well. We will OCR everything, and it is immediately searchable within Business Central. Now, there's a lot of features we'll walk through today. The key to remember is it's minimal to full automation, meaning it's your choice. Do you want to automate just one vendor and then scale over time? Do you want to automate a lot of vendors up front and add to that? Completely up to you. You pay for what you use. We'll automate the coding and approval routing, full and partial PO and receipt matching, and again, a large component of Copilot AI. The typical flow is that vendors send in invoices today to an existing email. We'll create a forwarding rule on your internal email to forward to the OCR email. Paper documents, we throw them on a scanner up to 500 pages at a time, and of course, send those to the OCR email as well. And then you define how much automation do you want to apply for those vendors, and of course, for all vendors as a good starting point. Approvals, we really meet you where you are. So standard flows would be, person A has a $1,000 limit, person B has 2,000, person C has 10,000, right? And based on the document, it will choose the appropriate flow. Custom flows would be, we always want person A and B. Advanced approvals would be more dimension-based approvals. So based on the dimension found in the document, we could assign a specific approval flow for that dimension. So theoretically, you could have many approval flows in the same invoice. Now, how do you approve? If you have a full license for Business Central, you can approve directly in Business Central or the approval portal. If you only have a team member license, that would be the minimum license required to approve, you would use the web approval portal. Now, the benefits of the portal is it leverages single sign-on, it's mobile friendly for an optimized view on the phone, and of course, it silos you to the approval portal. So from a compliance perspective, if you don't want everyone in Business Central, you can control what detail they can access, what permissions they can access, and of course, keep users out of BC that may not need to be inside there. Now, let's walk through expense quickly. Again, large component of Copilot AI. We're going to automate the coding and approval routing. And of course, those corporate credit cards come in, will automatically reconcile within Business Central. The typical flow for expense is you use a mobile app, an expense portal, which is mobile app on a desktop or browser, or email in those receipts. That corporate card feed is going to come into Business Central directly, and we'll create the expense card for you. Now, approvals work the same as document capture in the same approval portal or in Business Central. Full license for BC, team member license for the approval portal, and reimbursement, corporate credit cards, of course, will reconcile. But it depends on how you set the expense users up in Business Central. Are they set up as employees or vendors? ACH or payroll for employees, check or ACH for vendors. Awesome. So let's go ahead and dive in. We install directly into Business Central, and you'll see all of our different role centers for our different solutions directly in Business Central. So we're extending the role center. The analogy I like to use is we're like a turbo engine adding into a vehicle. The vehicle is the same vehicle. You don't have to automate or turn on that turbo engine. But if you do, it will make things faster. So from the outside looking in, it looks just like Business Central. It is just Business Central. We're just adding in functionality and extending the role center. So let's start with document capture. When documents come into document capture, they're going to be sent in through an OCR email. Now, I'm going to send a document in directly to the OCR email. Now, we'll attach a PDF or an XML document, and once sent in, it's going to come into the OCR queue, and then naturally fall into the import queue. Most customers will automate this import queue on a schedule or a job in Business Central, and say maybe every 10 minutes, or once a day, or once an hour. Now, once it's imported, if it's set to automate, it will create the invoice and will flow through to approvals. If there needs more attention, maybe we're missing some key information, maybe it's a new vendor, it will fall into the register queue, which is what we call our exception queue. Now, if I update my page, you'll see the document I sent in is now ready to import. So when I go to the import queue and I click import file, you'll notice it's going to say sent for approval. So this is what it will look like for most of your documents once you've applied automation. The first time you'd see them in approvals, and the approvers would be notified. Now you control, of course, that schedule for notifications. Do I want to notify them for every invoice? Or maybe I want to schedule once a day or once a week, or have different approvers being notified on different timeframes. When the approvers get that email, if they're a team member user, they'd click the link in their email, and that will open up the approval portal. But if I'm managing Business Central, I can access my approval queue and see all the different approvals in our role center. So I'd see, of course, the document number, the vendor info, the status of pending approval, who the initial approver is, and on the right-hand side, I'd see more detail, including the approval log and any comments left. Now for the demo, we have Robin, who has a team member license, and Esther, who is our admin or controller. So while I'm in Business Central, I'm acting as Esther. Now Robin, being our first approver, has a team member license. So Robin would click the link in her email, and it opens up the approval portal with single sign-on. It is a web browser, so of course optimized for a phone view. And at a high level, Robin could select all the documents she wants to approve and make a decision. Of course, naturally, she might want to open up the invoice. And always in the same view, you'll have the document image. We could add comments or attachments. And depending on our permissions, we can make changes. Now, I can also set permissions to say I only want Robin to access a subset of GL accounts. Or maybe I only want to expose one dimension like department and limit potentially the department she's able to access. But you can bring in any Business Central dimensions you'd like and truly make this your own. Now, if we'll approve this, you'll notice it's going to say sent to Esther in the top right corner. But if I want to look back and see what I've processed, I can. I can also set an out of office setting to delegate to someone else during my absence. Now, of course, in Business Central, Esther could get notified via email, but likely would already be in Business Central and could come in here and at a high level approve, or naturally drill into the open invoice and potentially add her own value. If she wants to change GL accounts, she can access the entire chart of accounts. Of course, has access to more dimensions. It's really based on the permissions. Now, if I go ahead and approve this one, you'll notice it's now going to be in the released queue, which means it's fully approved. This release queue, just like the import queue, could also be set on a job to schedule your posting. However, it is a final place for AP to come in and determine, do I need to make any changes? I could always reopen it. I could post it individually, select more and potentially select multiple documents to post, or even select a batch post. Of course, define what you want to post, set filters, replace dates. But a lot of customers like to automate this on some type of schedule once they're comfortable. Now, I'm going to post this individually. And now next, what we're going to do is walk through how does this work. So most of the documents in this register queue or the exception queue normally would not be here. But you'll notice we have documents 1 through 9. We have all of our vendor numbers, our vendor names, and unique templates for each vendor. Now, how do we create these templates? Well, of course, during implementation with Sabre, you will create a master template, which basically means you're defining what variables on the document do we need for every vendor. And that likely is something similar to this: invoice number, dates, amounts, descriptions. And of course, AI is going to find that different detail all those variables, and find it on the invoice for you. And this is creating about 90% automation upfront. Now, for some documents, we might simply want to code it to a GL account. So I would go to Template, Accounts for Amounts, and define for this document, I want to choose GL account or a different account type. The entire invoice is going to be routed to. Now, the template card, which is built upon import, applies this setup to all vendors. Create the invoice, submit for approval. Now we can, of course, change this and maybe manually submit for approval, or automate the approval and have it ready to post, or even post it. I could define an approval flow. I could require other details other than what was applied initially. But this is a much more simple invoice, just coded to a GL. If I wanted to capture line details, I can. But our goal is to save you time. So on the document card for the first invoice, you'll determine how do I want to capture lines, manually or with AI. Now with AI, it's going to bring in all those lines for you. And if there's already a cross-reference table in Business Central, or you've already determined the logic of these vendor numbers align with these item numbers, great, it's going to recognize and adopt that from Business Central. But we don't have to capture just inventory. We can also code lines to GL accounts, resources, fixed assets, and so on. So if you have service lines or other non-inventory lines, not a problem. Now, for this document, we'll capture lines, and any changes we make to the template is going to reflect for future documents. So for example, if I wanted to add a dimension, I could. So I could add in department, and I can even build translations, meaning if I don't have a specific dimension on the document, but I do have a keyword that indicates, hey, if I see this, then I want to choose the appropriate dimension. Great. So what we'll do is we'll say, well, project with our right mouse button aligns with department, and our left mouse button captures the value. And since it knows Deerfield corresponds with production department, it's bringing that dimension in automatically. But you only add that one time, and any future document is going to remember it. Now, since the first step for this was to create the invoice, when I click register, it's not only creating the invoice, but it's also sending for approval or having it ready to post. So it shows us in the comment section it was auto approved, but I may not want to automate the approval. I might want to change the template card and say, actually, I want to submit for approval instead. So when I register this, it will be in the approval queue now. This document here as well, I might want to change the template card, but this all looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and click register and move it forward. But keep in mind, this register queue or this document journal is typically only used for documents that need attention. What it looks like when it needs attention is likely is going to put a comment saying something's incorrect. We're missing this detail. And so I would go ahead and fix it, where I would say, well, on my invoice, here's the invoice number. Now, if you ever want to match to a purchase order or receipt, what we're doing is we're going to automate the manual function of get receipt lines or get order lines. So to do this, of course, the master or the AI captured all the basic elements we've defined up front. Attention to, invoice number, dates, descriptions, amounts. But it also captured the order number. Now, of course, most of our effort is going to be on the template card because we're changing the automated schedule. Instead of creating the invoice, we want to match to the order first and then create the invoice. Now, of course, we want to automate this, so we'll turn on auto run before match and define what we're matching against. Receipt or order, or just order, just receipt. Step 2, a lot of customers define, well, since the order was already approved and it matches with the invoice, do I need the invoice to go through an approval flow as well? Maybe not. Maybe you auto approve and release if it matches. Now, of course, I might want to require the order number moving forward, to where if it's not present, it will flag me and say, I need this. But we do recognize not every customer matches just on an order number on the document. They might want to leverage quantity or cost or unit of measure. So to match on the line level, you would click Recognize Lines. And now you can define, yes, I always want to match the item number, or only if it's present. Or yes, I always want to match on the quantity. Or the unit cost. And I can define a variance for the unit cost as well by amount or percentage. So in short, there's a lot you can do with document capture. The simple answer is, can I do this manually in Business Central? If you can, Continia can definitely automate it. Now you'll notice this document here, it says it's matched to a purchase receipt in the system. So all we did was automate the get receipt lines function, where it looked at the open receipts and orders for this vendor and found a match with the order number. Now, when I process this or click register, not only are we creating the invoice, we're also auto approving and having it ready to post. And the receipt lines or the order lines will be brought into your invoice. The comment section shows what was auto approved and when. But this is by far the most efficient way to automate because we're simply verifying everything matches in Business Central and will streamline activities. Now, with document capture, of course, all our role center will be up to date. We'll see any open invoices. We'll see invoices waiting for approval. We'll see those invoices waiting to be posted. And of course, any ones with errors. We can also search our entire environment with document search. Now, do I want to narrow down my search? Because we have many categories out of the box for assigning to existing records like vendor records or employee records. And you can also create invoices, create orders, create receipts, and create sales orders. And you can add your own categories for other documents you want to assign to. But I might leave it blank and search my entire environment. And I could search for something like a chair. And I want to find every invoice or every document that has the keyword chair somewhere on the document. Because every keyword, every text that was sent to the OCR is searchable. With this, I can find entries. So if it's posted, I can see all of the related entries to the document number. I can also go back and look at the incoming email and see all the different documents that were sent in from that vendor. I can show the file and download the PDF. And if I need quickly to go back and maybe change something or verify how it was coded, I can go back and do so. Now, status reminders for approvers, likely you'll set that on a schedule. You'll say every day we want to send out one email to approvers. Or maybe some approvers, they need more attention. So you can define different schedules for different approvers. Or just assign them to a group and assign policies to multiple people. Now, another feature for document capture is purchase contracts. So if you have any recurring invoices, subscriptions, contracts, and you want to keep track of those and be reminded when it's ready for renewal, or streamline the approval if it fits in your metrics. For example, customers use purchase contracts for software subscriptions, rent, utilities, or just to keep track of something that's reoccurring. Now, if an invoice comes in, and let's say it's a reoccurring invoice, I could say, well, for this invoice, I want to assign a purchase contract to it. This is for potentially supplies, and I receive this once a month, maybe. I'm invoiced, say, monthly or maybe quarterly, and the contract started, say, the beginning of the year. Now, if I put yearly, now I'm in a demo environment, so I can't edit this, but I could say, when's my first approval date? Is it maybe 11/30, like a month before renewal? Great. So a month before, whoever I define will be notified that this contract is ready for approval. Now, naturally, it would bring in all of your lines, or it would already predetermine if the invoice is already coded. It would bring those details in. But I could also say, well, this is for office supplies. The start date is in May. The end date maybe is December 31st. I could say the cost per month, let's say it's $1,000. And since I'm charged quarterly, it's going to say, well, it's $4,000 per year. Now, the cool thing is I'll be able to go back in my environment and I'll see all the purchase contracts that are out there. If I want to see what's my recurring spend, I'd have a nice visual of all those contracts. And if the invoice comes in and everything checks out, we could automate that for approval and just keep track of those statistics so we know what our recurring spend is. But in a nutshell, that is document capture. There's a lot you can do with it, but of course you can start small. You can walk or crawl before you walk and then walk before you run. You are only charged for what you actually process in the cloud. If you have an on-premise environment, that would be charged based off your full users because it helps us determine the company size since we can't see the volume. Now, for sake of time, I will go ahead and navigate to expense. And of course, I'll leave this environment open. So if we have any questions on document capture, you can definitely ask those in just a moment. Now, in expense management, you'll follow expenses from reports, open expenses, mileages, and per diems, and also purchase contracts for reoccurring expenses. Now, most expense users, they use the mobile app. Now, it's a very easy app to adopt. Extremely straightforward, very short time to get up and running. But the app does leverage single sign-on, so no change of Microsoft. And you can do personal expenses, mileage, per diem, and reports. And corporate credit cards are coming into Business Central right away and prompting the expense user in their open queue that they have expenses that require receipts. So that transaction fee that came into Business Central already created the expense card for us. So you'll see it was over $1,000 expense on Tuesday for a MasterCard. And it's already coded to an expense type because we know this merchant, this vendor, is assigned to this GL. Now, it might not always do that. It might say, we don't know what expense type this is. And you can select one. These are all tied to GL accounts. And you can customize this, of course. But really, the only thing I'd have to do for corporate cards is attach my receipt. So I'm going to pull from my camera album as if I already took the picture. But I could take a live picture, or I could pull from my shared files. And frankly, I could submit for approval. It's that simple. If you have a personal expense, maybe you don't have a corporate card, you likely would either take a picture to create the expense card or pull from your camera album. And we're going to OCR that receipt and pull off some detail. Now, it's like the power of two. So if we see this vendor more than once, we're going to predetermine what the coding is. And if you only had one payment type, it would default to that singular payment type. The expense type for this, we're going to use just food. And I'd put in something like lunch. And then submit for approval. If I go back to that same vendor, we're going to recognize that. And so if it recognizes the receipt, it's going to predetermine a lot of the fields for you after it is OCR'd. Now I could submit, but if I wanted to on any expense, whether it's corporate card or personal, I could allocate lines, or I could add it to a report. And of course, I can create a report. So let's say I went to a conference and I want to combine all my expenses from that conference into one report. I can create new expenses. It's already tied to that report. I can bring in corporate card expenses. But if I save this report, you can also add expenses from the expense card. You can add those to the report. Here's another corporate card expense. I could say, well, actually, it's tied to this report. I'm going to add my receipt. And I'm just going to save this. And we continually add expenses to that report. And once I'm ready to move forward, we can submit it for approval. So I'll add a few to it and we'll send it on. Now on this report, this is where I'll actually showcase mileage. So mileage, we leverage a Google Maps integration. So this is going to pull in your address, and also you can define where you're going. Oh, let's change this up. Let me cancel, and let's retry it. So let's say I started off at one address and I went to a local airport. It's going to populate the distance for us. Now I choose the appropriate routes. I leave my purpose, let's say airport, and the distance in miles or kilometers is going to calculate from the map. The amount is pending calculation because we're leveraging the mileage rates defined in Business Central. And of course, you can get very customized on those mileage rates for different users, have different policies, different rates, and so on. Now, when I click save, or if it was individual, click submit. Is it one-way trip, adding a stop, or creating a return trip? So for myself, I go to the airport, I park, take my flight, and come back home. So I typically create a return trip and click save. So now, if we look at that mileage, we have it to and from the airport. We have our 2 corporate card expenses. I might say I'm ready to submit this for approval. Now in Business Central, this sync is going to run on a job. We're going to always sync with Business Central so that our role center is always up to date. So we can see we have one open report, and it's showing me that there's a warning on these documents. It's purely just because of my demo environment, but I could drill into this and see what it's saying. And all it's saying is this expense is tied to an invoice because we do have an integration between expense and document capture. So if you use a corporate card to pay for an invoice, it will keep track of that so you don't create a duplicate expense that conflicts with an invoice. But in Business Central, of course, you'll be able to see the receipt, all the detail, and of course, with the right permissions, you could make changes here. Expenses. We'll also see that some are pending expense user, attachments are missing, some are waiting for approval. And we have our approval group that's assigned. So we'll always have a good idea of what's out there, who has expenses in their name, who is waiting for approval, and all the approval entries, regardless if it's in my name as the admin or not, I'd see what's out there. So at a high level, I'll see some good detail. If I want to create that out of office setting in Business Central, I can. And if I want to make a decision, I can do it at a high level or drill into the expense and see that it's matched to a bank transaction for this one. I could approve I could reject it and potentially leave a comment saying, hey, this is not for me, or something's incorrect. I could forward it, and I have options on how I forward. Or I could leave it on hold. But since this sync is going to typically run on a schedule, we'll have an update, and our expense users will also have updates. So all in real time, when they synchronize or reopen their app once they logged out, it's going to reflect in the history that, well, some expenses are now approved. Some are ready for reimbursement even. And so we'll have a good idea as an expense user and, of course, in Business Central where everything is. So any BC reporting, if you want to see how much did I spend at this hotel or how much did I spend for this GL account, all of our data is BC data. So it's very easy to report on.
Well, it looks like that would be all of our questions. Again, thank you for attending this webinar. I'd also like to thank Brett for presenting for us today. Once again, you can find our social media, our website, and a link to our Calendly to schedule a 30-minute meeting with one of our experts at Sabre. I hope you all have a great day, and we hope to see you again in one of our upcoming webinars.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody.